Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for Back to School with Cyber Civics. I'm Diana Graber. I'm the founder and director of Cyber Civics and author of Raising Humans in a Digital World. And we're so lucky today to have Peter Kelly with us. He's the outreach director. If you're already a Cyber Civics school, chances are you've either emailed with or spoken to Peter. He seems to know all of you personally, from what I can tell. And Sony Albright, who is my partner in crime. She's the curriculum specialist here at Cyber Civics, and we have had many late nights texting each other back and forth about AI developments that happen every minute. So anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through the curriculum, which we're very excited about. We spend a ton of time updating these lessons to try to make them as relevant and timely as possible for your students. We hope that you'll see that as we go through it together. If you're not already familiar with Cyber Civics, we're the elementary and middle school digital literacy curriculum. We've been around for 15 years, which is so hard to believe. We were founded as a school here in Southern California, a small charter school, and now we're used by schools literally across the US and even other countries. Lots in Canada, by the way. If you're here from Canada, hello to you. Our mission is still to help students become ethical, safe, and productive digital citizens. And we try to make that as easy as possible for you by the way we lay out the curriculum. Before we get started, I just wanted to say two things really important. You don't have to know anything about technology to teach these lessons. What students need more than ever is your wisdom to guide them through these challenging times. And by creating that safe space in the classroom where you can talk directly to your students about these issues, and more importantly, let them discuss it with their peers, it really helps them make sense of a challenging digital world. So without further ado, what you see here is the landing page for digital on-ramps. We're going to start there. This is our 4th and 5th grade program. And I'm going to pull over here. Got two screens going, so bear with me here. When you sign up for Cyber Civics, your school gets a proprietary link that allows any teacher at your school to sign up for a private account. We often get asked, what's the subscription rate? And we don't publish it on the website because it really depends on the size of your school. I mean, we have schools that have 10 kids taking this to huge districts. So we really try to price it so it's affordable for everybody. So contact Peter if you want that personal pricing. But I am showing you digital on-ramps. 4th and 5th grade is set up just like the middle school program. What you see here is the teacher portal. It starts out with your resources. There's always a getting started guide, which is very short. You can read it here in the portal. You can make it big to see it within. It's very short, but it tells you how to use everything that's within your account. The next thing you'll see is the syllabus, which will walk you through all the lessons. This one has about 40 lessons in there that are taught over 4th and 5th grade. They're broken up into 4 different units, using values to guide you, getting ready to take flight, you online, online safety. So we're going to start with this first unit. And the reason we start with values is these lessons really are social emotional learning lessons that prepare kids to use technology well and prepare them for our middle school curriculum. That's the reason we call it digital on-ramps. It really is an on-ramp towards digital literacy. And values are a great way to understand how to use, to be either online or offline, because they guide you towards making good decisions. So for those of you who already teach digital on-ramps, what you'll see new this year are our values cards. We made little cards for all the values that you can print onto cardstock, cut them up, and use them as you teach these lessons. So we thought that would be super fun. The way the values lessons are set up, they come in pairs. So we address the value first in the offline world, and then we address it in the online world. So the best way to tell you this is to show you. So we're going to start with one of our favorite ones. Sony and I love teaching this one. By the way, what I didn't mention about Sony is she has taught Cyber Civics in more schools, I guarantee you, than any other teacher. What are you at now, Sony? Like school number 8, maybe?
Yeah, 7.
7. So yeah, if there's somebody that has experience with these lessons, it's Sony. So if you have questions for her, make sure you put them in the Q&A box. All right, so this is what the teacher sees when they go into their portal, a little 2 sentences about the lesson, how to teach it, tells you what to do, and then they download the lesson plan. So you just click that and it downloads on your computer. I downloaded it first so that it would be really fast. But you see here in the lesson plan, you get the standards, the learning objectives, the vocabulary, and it tells you how to introduce the lesson. So I'm going to throw it to Sony here because I had put a way for you to let the students introduce the lesson to each other, but she did it herself. Sony, why don't you explain how you started this lesson?
Yeah, so every lesson in cyber civics and all of our levels kind of gives you some prompts, which is one of the reasons why it makes it so turnkey. It tells you exactly how to get started on it. And every once in a while, the lessons really lend themselves an opportunity to kind of surprise the students or to include them into what you're going to do before they realize that that's happening. And this is a great example. So tact is something that most kids, don't really hear that word a lot, or something maybe we don't spend a ton of time talking about. And so I started out this lesson with a class of fifth graders, and I had worked it out with another teacher that was in the class at the same time. And he had on kind of a really interesting vest that had a bunch of woven pieces on it, and it was kind of a patchwork. It was really interesting to look at. And I said, in just the craziest way, I looked at him as class was starting and I said, "What are you wearing?" And of course, all the kids were big-eyed and totally surprised that I would say that. And so it was the perfect way for us to introduce what tact is and was that tactful and how did that feel? And we were able to even like go a step further and later on in the lesson kind of reflect a little bit. What was some better ways I could have said that? And this, again, is the real world application that we want kids to be using for when they're online, because it's so much easier in the online space to then say something that would be taken in a really inappropriate way. We want to make that same connection to the offline and online world.
Exactly. So that's a great way. We actually wrote some prompts that the kids can say to each other, but you get the idea here. So once you introduce the lesson, we give you a video to play, and I'm just going to play the first bit of this one.
Ugh, you like hopping? That's weird. You know, fine is the best way to get around. Saying this to my friend didn't show a lot of tact, did it? Now that I think about it, the way that I said it could have made my friend feel bad for liking to hop, and that's not what I meant. A more tactful approach might have been to say something like this instead. I usually like to fly, but it looks like you really like to hop. Want to tell me why? Maybe I should try it sometime. This is a more tactful approach. In case you were wondering, tact is the ability to be sensitive, polite, and thoughtful of
Get
others.
the idea. So when you do the video, then you go back to your lesson plan. Bear with me here while I pull it over. So every cyber civics lesson has a hands-on activity. This one, it goes through what you just saw in the video. Then it introduced the activity that you can pass out for your students. So this one, you have your student practice tact by helping each of the young people below choose a more tactful way of expressing their feelings. Keep these tips in mind. So you review the tips they just learned. And there's a bunch of scenarios here, but I'll just read the first one. Raul and Paul are paired for a group project. Paul begins drawing on their poster board. When Raul looks over, he notices Paul has measured wrong. If he keeps writing his letters that big, they won't have room to fit everything in. Raul says, "Stop, you messed it up." How do you think this comment made Paul feel? What would have been a more tactful thing for Raul to say? So you get the idea. There's a whole bunch of scenarios that are appropriate for fourth and fifth graders. But what I really love is like once they understand how important this value is in their everyday lives, we look at its pair, which in this case is showing tact online. And as we all know, I mean, I've done this lesson so many times with adults, and they're like, this makes me think about the things I see online, because it's hard sometimes to write things in a way that isn't going to be offensive or hurt someone's feelings, even for adults. So you can imagine how hard this is for a child who's just learning how to communicate appropriately. So this one, same thing. What you'd want to do is download the lesson plan first. And I've got so many lesson plans over here. Maybe Sony, you could say a couple words while I find the appropriate lesson plan to pull over.
Yeah, it's amazing too. Every time I teach this lesson, the kids teach me another thing or give me another example of a time when they have seen actually something online that wasn't tactful, or they can give examples. So, having these conversations in every level that we do is an opportunity for kids to share what's actually happening. And if you do give them that opportunity, I swear to you, they will actually overshare information, which can be really helpful for your classroom culture and just kind of understanding what's happening with your students.
All right, thank you, Sonia. I found the lesson plan, and it's just like the previous one. We have a few more vocabulary words. We review the answers from their previous lesson and set up the video. So the video, again, I'll just play a few moments of it.
In the physical world, if we forget to show tact, usually we see the impact of our forgetfulness right away. In the online world, we don't often see or feel the impact of what we say or type, because the reactions of those we interact with happen out of sight, way on the other side of another screen. We miss out on their facial expressions or tone of voice. Being tactful, telling the truth in such a way that...
So that's how we start applying it to the real world. I've lost my lesson plan back here. Hold on, where'd it go? I wanted to show it to you because I really love the activities in this lesson plan. Here we go. So if you look at the lesson plan again, there's student activities at the very end. And this one we've actually, made it applicable to the online world. So here's the example. Your friend makes and posts a video online that unfortunately you find really boring. Your friend asks you to send the video to everyone you know so it can get more views. You really don't want to do this, but you also don't want to hurt your friend's feelings. Give an example of a tactful response you might make to this request. So we drew like a little cell phone and your comment there. So there's a whole bunch of these with scenarios that are just things that kids deal with all the time in different platforms. So we kind of changed it up a little, but it allows them to practice giving tactful responses to different scenarios that they might meet when they really do go online. So great way for them to practice being a good digital citizen before they actually even use tools. So I love the pairing there. From the values lessons, we move on to getting ready to take flight, which is just real basics about how to use the internet, how search works, browsing, etc. I'm just going to take one moment here to show you, this is a media literacy lesson for the very young. You can't always believe what you see, so let me play a moment of this.
Whoa! It says right here that aliens just landed. I can't believe this. Turns out I really couldn't believe it because it wasn't true. Did you know that not everything you see online is true? While the internet is an awesome place to find information on just about anything, we still have to use our critical thinking skills to evaluate the information.
The funny thing is, when we made that video about the aliens, we just chose that topic, but I have since read research that for children this age, that is one of the pieces of misinformation that they truly believe that aliens have landed on planet Earth. So it's very applicable to the types of things they see online that you would want to correct. So I'm going to show you quickly the lesson plan for this one because I think it's a really fun activity. And as we go through the curriculum, you'll see that we address misinformation again later in the middle school curriculum, but we do it in a really simple way for these 4th and 5th graders, and we give them a little checklist on how they can tell if something's true or not online, and we give them 2 articles, one is true and one is not, so they have to figure out which is which. So that's super fun. So then it goes on to a bunch of lessons on, your personal information, what it means to be online. And we follow it up by our final unit with online safety that has all kinds of great stuff like keeping safe online, keeping safe from cyberbullying, keeping safe from strangers. If your school taught digital on-ramps last year, there's 2 new lessons this year. Keeping safe from cyberbullying is one of them, and what is personal information is the other. I'll tell you, Sonia and I working on the AI lessons that are coming, we realize that setting the stage of understanding personal information at an early age is very, very, very important. So hopefully you will find value in those new lessons. All right, so I'm going to move on now to level 1. Our middle school curriculum is now in its 15th year, which is so hard to believe, but it's really given us a chance to refine them. And level 1 is so important because it's about digital citizenship, which is the safe and responsible use of digital tools. It's the foundation that everything else builds on. So when your kids have taken digital on-ramps and they get here, they're really ready for it. And this will set them up for the future lessons in information literacy and media literacy that we offer in 7th and 8th grade. So this is a lot more robust than what I just showed you. It also starts with a getting started guide that you'll see here. This one's a little bit longer. It tells you how to use the portal. We always give you a ton of other resources if you need help. One thing every school gets when you sign up for Cyber Civics is anytime you need a quick one-to-one tutorial online, just ping us. Any of the three of us will help you to show you what to do, how to find resources, maybe give you teaching tips, whatever you need. We're always here to do that. Well, maybe not in the middle of the night, but we're here most of the time. You'll find a teaching at home guide. This is for anybody who's a homeschooler or teaching a group of kids at home. We tell you how to do that. There's a send home explainer for parents and guardians that tell them what you'll be teaching in the classroom, and then the syllabus. Middle school, we give you a pre and post assessment so you can check and see what your kids are learning at the beginning, what they do or don't know, and what they have learned at the end, which a lot of schools like to see. And then the way this level, it's also broken up into units. The first one really talks about being a detective, and I got to give this a moment of attention because the premise here is that these tools come and go. Every year there's a new tool, and how we use them is what's important, and humans have learned how to adapt to their tools throughout history. So that's how we set up this level of cyber civics. Then we move into what it means to be a citizen online and off, which a lot of kids aren't given that groundwork of what it means to be a citizen in the digital world. And then I'm going to actually show you our digital reputation unit as an example. Every unit starts with a teacher guide that you see here. And this is just a one-pager, I promise, that tells you what you're teaching, where you can go for additional resources. The next thing you see, I think, is really important, and that's our send home parent letter. We've designed a letter that gives you an activity that aligns with every lesson that's taught in the classroom so that the parents and kids could do this stuff at home. Because as you know, this stuff is 24/7. So we really need to be partners with parents on helping kids be safe online. And all of these videos we're showing you, we've put them in a private place on YouTube, and we've given the parents links here. We hope that the parents and child will watch them together to talk about these things, that they're learning in the classroom. Have you guys found that any of the parents in your classrooms have used these letters in the activities? Peter or Sony?
Yeah, well, I personally do. I send them out at the beginning of a unit just to engage parents. Also, in classroom teaching, it's a great tool that you can send out before a class meeting to kind of prompt some discussion of things that will be coming up. So it's so useful, and it just allows teachers to have something really simple but effective to share with parents about what's happening in the classroom.
It's so important. All right, so I'm going to show you one of the lessons. This is how it's set up in the portal for middle school. We made Google Slides for this lesson, which makes, I always say, the lesson practically teaches itself when you use the slides. Again, here's the link to just the video. And the downloads you get is this lesson plan you see here on the left, a student packet so they can do their work. It's either printable or fillable. So if you use some sort of online platform at your school, you can have them do the work online. So I'm going to open the slides for this lesson. So this year, if you're an existing teacher, I hope you will appreciate this. We put notes at the bottom of all of the slides now, so you can just read the notes. You don't even have to read the lesson plan if you don't want to. But I'm going to kind of walk you through these slides. So we usually start with a question. We want to engage the kids in conversation, to help them talk to each other and to you about what they know about the topic. And then usually that guides us into the video, which I'll play.
Have you ever heard this saying before? Your reputation precedes you. What is a reputation anyway? It is the judged opinion that people in general hold towards something or someone. So, if your reputation precedes you, that means that people will have probably heard things about you before they've even actually ever met you. These things could be positive or negative, or even true or false. And the place where people will have probably learned things about you before they've met you face to face is here. All of the information about you that lives online.
How true is that, right? Today, this is what our kids are dealing with. They're judged before they even have much of a digital reputation. So it's a really important topic. I'll go back to the slides really quick. So again, the slides are so easy to use. They tell you what to say to the kids in the classroom. This one I'm going to go through pretty fast, but it shows examples of students not much older than themselves that have lost opportunities because of things they posted online that were inappropriate. We all know that horrible story of the kids who got asked not to attend Harvard because of things they posted online. So we tell kids about that and make them think about, their future in that way. Now, every cyber civics lesson, again, has an activity. You've gotten there when you see this slide. For this activity, we ask the students to pretend to be college admissions officers and to decide which of two final candidates will be the lucky recipient of full athletic scholarship. And their decision is based on the reputation of each candidate. So thanks to Sony, this got a refresh this year. It has more current information in it. We've got the little email that our candidate David Downing sent to the admissions committee, telling what a great student he is and his high GPA, and he plays soccer, etc. So we want the students to compare what David says about himself to what the internet says about him. So we look at some stuff here like, oh boy, he allegedly hacked into the school computer. Gosh, the candidate liked and commented on a controversial post in which an activist damaged artwork in an effort to draw attention to environmental issues. He posted a video of toilet papering a friend's house. And gosh, that's not very nice. Skipped 3 classes today and still passed the quiz. School is such a joke. And here's a little chat in which he's talking about the other kids in a group are saying how he doesn't really do any work. So not so great. So we look at the other candidate. This is a girl, another honor student. She's got all these accolades. So we look at her digital reputation. Well, she wants to be an English major, but we look at her posts and she's a horrible speller, horrible at grammar. She also skipped school for some much needed beach therapy and put it online. Now that wasn't very smart, was it? She says she's on the honor roll, but her name doesn't appear on the website. She stole some information from someone else's blog. She participated in a TikTok challenge, which a lot of kids do. This one, she took the soap dispenser from her school bathroom, put it on TikTok, and her rating on tutors.com is not very high. So I did that really quick. With your students, you would do that a lot slower. I actually print those out and let the students look at them because they get really, really into it. They circle things, they ask each other questions, and then we want them to do an analysis, decide which of 2 candidates would get the scholarship. Usually students decide nobody because they don't, they're like, oh, no way, I wouldn't give it to anybody. But what you want to do is really challenge their assumptions, because as they learn in that digital on-ramps lesson, not everything you see online is true, right? So did David really hack into his computer? If they read closely in that article, it was actually a different David. And you want to talk about whether it's fair to judge David by something he commented on. Well, people are judged oftentimes by what they commented on online. What about Sarah? Why was her name not on the website? Well, people don't always update their websites very fast, so etc. So kind of the bottom line here is digital reputations are very complex. We want kids to think about them deeply, but also to realize that not everything you see online is true. So I'm sorry to do that so darn fast for you, but I just wanted you to get a sense of what a typical cyber civics lesson is like. In some ways, that's not a fair representation, because I don't know about you, Peter and Sony, that lesson for me has often spanned more than one class period. Yeah. How for you, Peter?
Every time, because like you said, they want to dive deep into those online profiles and find what's wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of cyber civics is the lessons are so, well, they change with every class. Like you'll have one class and for some reason that lesson won't resonate with them. And the next year you'll get another class that wants to go way slower because something in it speaks to something that's happened to somebody in the class. So I really love it that way. It's really, I mean, there's never been a time that I walked into a classroom and not taught a lesson that someone didn't have something that happened to them online similar to what's in the lesson. So this is stuff kids are dealing with 24/7 right now. So it's just incumbent upon us to open a space where they can talk about these issues. All right, I'm going to continue through. We have a whole unit on ethical thinking, which talks about email etiquette and texting etiquette, how to comment respectfully. Our cyberbullying and digital drama unit is pretty robust. I have a few minutes here to show you. This is such an important lesson. What is cyberbullying? What is digital drama? And I think it's really important. Our terminology is so important when we talk about these things with kids. And there's really a distinct difference between cyberbullying, which is so serious, and digital drama, which is a lot more common amongst children. So I'm just going to play the slideshow here for a moment. again, you have that discussion prompt at the beginning of the lesson, talking about online cruelty, what is cyberbullying, and then the little video.
Chatting with friends online can be loads of fun. But sometimes, being able to hide behind a screen can embolden some people to say or do things they'd never say or do face to face in the real world. One example of this sort of behavior is cyberbullying. Ever heard of it? It's an unfortunate and very serious byproduct of
So it goes on to explain the distinct characteristics of cyberbullying and say, but there's another type of behavior that's a lot more common. This is what kids in middle school and before are really dealing with, and that's digital drama. So I'll play this for a moment.
Meet Colby. He's in middle school and he communicates with his friends via a group chat that includes boys from his class and some teammates from his baseball team. They use this group chat to organize in-person meetups and the online game sessions that they often play after school. One day, Colby notices that he is receiving far fewer messages than usual from this group. He begins to wonder why. About a week later, he learns from a friend that the boys started a new group chat and that he has not been included. You can imagine how Colby felt being left out of all the activities being organized, the inside jokes, and the conversations happening in the new group chat. And while, at first glance, this might seem like an example of cyberbullying, especially to Colby's parents when they heard about it, it is actually an example of another type of cruelty that is a lot more common online: digital drama.
So I really love that video. We don't have time to play the whole thing, but it has about 5 more examples of digital drama. And I know that when I've played it, the kids are like, oh, that happened to me. Oh, I know what you mean. Like, they resonate with all those examples because, again, you know, sometimes people that age are cruel to each other online and they don't even really understand the impact of their cruelty until you give them a chance to discuss it. So really important lesson, I think. All right, so let me go back. Do you guys have any comments on that one?
No, just one thing I will point out though is that we pride ourselves on being very solutions based here. We don't just shout from the rooftops all the problems with online life. We really try to introduce the potential pitfall or problem, and then offer a solution on how they can handle it should they encounter it, or a friend encounter it too.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, Peter, because I didn't get a chance to get to that, because usually it's the last part of the lesson is, here is what you can do. Here is 10 steps. Here is a solution. So Peter's absolutely right. That's really, we want to equip kids to be self-sufficient online, because we can't be there 24/7 to take care of them. They need to take care of themselves and one another. So super important. And then our last unit is identity and privacy. This is when you talk about how they present themselves online, what pictures they choose, what words they choose to represent themselves. I think we'd all agree that one of our favorite lessons is myself, my selfie, and we don't have time to show it, but this is such a great art project where they draw their own selfies. We have a whole teacher guide, but these are some selfies that kids in the past have drawn for themselves. For this one, in order to understand the impact of a selfie, we actually review some of the original selfies, which are self-portraits. Each of these self-portraits by famous artists tell a story. And we want kids to use that as a way for them to understand that, you know, everything you post online says something about yourself, even pictures or selfies that you put out there. So that's a super fun lesson. So hopefully you got a little idea there of how level 1 sets the stage. I'll give you a little history lesson here, but when we started teaching cyber civics, that very first year when I finished teaching level 1, I had the kids at the end. I specifically had one boy stand at his desk and say, "I'm never going online. It's way too much responsibility." And I thought to myself, you know, that's not the objective here. It's like, I want kids to use technology in really positive and productive ways. And so, sure, let's, you know, show them the pitfalls, but we got to show them how to use it in really wonderful ways too. So that's why we added a year of information literacy. This is how to find, retrieve, analyze, and use online information. And I couldn't find a full curriculum on this anywhere. So we put this together and super proud of this year now. It's got so many great lessons in it. It's set up just like the previous year. You have all your introductory materials here, the getting started guide, the teaching at home guide, the explainer for parents and guardians. We have the student assessments here. And then this year we added a couple new things, device care and maintenance. This is if you're handing out one-to-one devices in your classroom, we have a lesson here to help kids set it up correctly, followed by another lesson on the safe and responsible use of technology. I will say if your school is handing out devices sooner than this and you want these lessons, please contact us. These can be used in any year. We put them in this year because they're going to be using the computer more with these lessons. It's followed by a unit on learning balance, which is all about the time they spend online, which is really important right after summer vacation when largely a lot of kids have been online quite a bit. Oh boy, I wish I had time to really go into this unit on online safety. There's a lot packed in here, and this is another lesson we really updated this year because there's a lot of new threats and scams that kids are being exposed to. So we've got 3 videos in this one, but just as a quick overview, we cover phishing and malware and pop-ups and online shopping scams, influencer scams, quiz scams, and the real important one, catfishing scams. So in every case, we tell the kids what they can do if they are approached by any of these scams or threats. And then we play a really fun game where we read scenarios and they hold up the flag that's appropriate, like, oh no, that's not safe. Oh, that might be okay. So it's a great way for them to actually interact with these problems in the classroom. All right, so I'm going to show you the next unit, which really is starting to get into information literacy, which is searching the web. And this is when we actually integrated AI stuff throughout all the lessons because that's how artificial intelligence is today. It's not one thing. It's in everything, it's in search. So we started integrating it into some of our search lessons. So I'm going to start there. Just like level 1, every unit starts with a short teacher guide that tells you what you're about to teach. It's got the family activities next, which align with every lesson you teach in the classroom. So the teacher just writes in the date of the lesson, and it's got an activity and a video that the parents can do and watch together. I'm going to jump to this lesson, how to search work, because it will show you how we've integrated AI into these lessons. So for this one, you'll see here, we have the Google Slides, the lesson plan, the student packet. So I'm going to play the slides for you for this lesson. This is brand new. We added this just this year. So let me play slideshow, how to search work. So I just want to say a thing here, because this is something Sonia and I have agonized about quite a bit. So with AI and kids using it so much, you might wonder if traditional search skills still matter. They matter more than ever. And that's because AI is not always accurate. It makes a lot of mistakes. It has a lot of hallucinations. The only way you can use AI accurately these days is by checking the information that you get. And in order to do that, you need to have really strong searching skills. And so I would argue that search skills are more important now than they have ever been. So that's why it's still important to teach kids these lessons. So if you see here, start talking about today when we search for something online using a search engine, the first thing you're likely to see the results is a summary page created by artificial intelligence. So a little video about that.
If you've ever had a question, chances are you've turned to the internet for an answer. Search has changed a lot over the years and has especially changed recently, what with the introduction of a little something called artificial intelligence, or AI. You've probably seen this term a lot lately. Nowadays, when you enter a query into a search engine, one of the first things you're likely to see is an AI summary at the very top of the search results. AI uses the massive amount of internet data it's trained on to pull together a synthesized answer to your question. AI can generate quick, concise answers in a conversational tone, easily summing up.
So you'll see where we're going, but we tell the kids they're going to learn more about AI in this level, but we want them to know now that while summaries are helpful, they don't always provide complete or accurate information. As this example shows, how many rocks should a child eat? And AI suggests that a child should eat at least 1 small rock a day, is recommended by AI. So yeah, it makes a lot of mistakes. So good search skills still matter. And as you go through this lesson, we talk about just the basics of web search. But what I really love here is the activity. What's the best way to describe this to you? So I'm going to actually show the lesson plan, because what we want the kids to do is to have really strong keyword skills. We want them to be able to know how to put the right keywords in the search engine to get the right results. So if you're we have an easy way to do the activity and kind of a more complex way, but you can put a bunch of terms and we give you some ideas in the teacher pack. But for example, a term would be paperclip. You put it on a post-it on the kid's forehead, you put them in pairs, and they have to describe the term to the other person without using the words paper or clip. So it gives them kind of an activity where they can try using really strong descriptive words to try to get to the answer that they want. So pretty fun. All right, so back to what comes next. So that is part of our search unit. There's actually quite a few lessons in there. We tell them how to read a search results page, which this is the last lesson every year that we update because it changes so much. So we try to keep that as current as possible. Wikipedia is still very important. It still pops up high on our search results, but we want kids to know how it works, how to use it. And then why I can't cut and paste, which is a lesson on plagiarism. Then we come to our AI literacy unit. This is all new this year. Some of the lessons, if you teach cyber civics, though, you'll recognize from last year. You can't understand AI without understanding with an algorithm. An algorithm is essentially a list of instructions. And this is a super fun lesson where the kids make a paper airplane, but at the same time, they write directions, how to do it, which is an algorithm, a set of instructions. And then we do the lesson, and at the end of the lesson, the kids trade their instructions with each other, and they have to make a paper airplane by following the instructions that someone else has written. And I think that's a really important lesson because while a lot of us think AI is magic, it is not. It's been written by a human. These algorithms are human created, and we really want that to be understood by the students. So they get that when they're trying to follow their friends' instructions and the airplane comes out all wrong, so it's a great way to introduce AI, which is the next lesson. What is artificial intelligence? So we give them the basics on what AI is. And then this is a brand new lesson this year, generative AI and research. As you know, a lot of kids are using these different tools to research things in school. And so they really need to know the pitfalls, the benefits. And so that this lesson really describes that for them. So I'll play the slides. Sony wrote this lesson. It's a really good one. Generative AI and research. So it starts with our video.
Have you ever had to research something like a historical event, a scientific discovery, or even a famous person? From checking out library books to searching online, there are many ways to discover more about a topic. Today, many people are even turning to artificial intelligence, also known as AI, to help them conduct their research. But the big question is, can you always trust what you get with AI? AI can be useful for certain tasks like brainstorming, summarizing information, explaining vocabulary or concepts, and generating outlines or action lists.
So you get the gist there. But what I love about this lesson is, there's a lot in here. It tells them what generative AI is, how does it work, gives an example, the vocabulary's in here, tells you the downsides. So there's downsides for sure. We go through those. But what I love here is solution-based, as Peter mentioned. We tell them the ways that using generative AI can be really good. Finding ideas, summarizing information, explaining vocabulary or concepts, and then tell them 5 smart ways to use AI. Now, I love the activity in here. Read and research the AI-generated paragraphs your teacher gave you by using a search engine. If you detect any hallucinations or misleading information, circle them. Provide the correct information using credible sources. So this is how they can go back to use the strong search skills you just taught them to really make sure what they're getting from AI is accurate. So love that, putting 2 lessons together. One comment about AI, which I find so fascinating, is you have to be 13 to use these tools. ChatGPT and all of them require kids to be 13. And so that's why if there is AI stuff, we've done it for you ahead of time so that you're not putting the kids on these platforms in the classroom. Sony, how do you get around that when you're with middle school kids?
I mean, we always talk about the privacy capture in seventh grade level does a really, or the second year level does a really good job talking about privacy. So they hear me say over and over again, like there's age limits for a reason. It's actually a gift that you get to have when somebody doesn't get to take your information. So you want to learn about it first. What are they using for before you let somebody have your information?
Exactly. And that leads us into our whole unit on personal information, which is really important right now. We talk about privacy policies, terms of use. Algorithms are awesome, or are they? We talk about filter bubbles, what passwords are still important. And one note about this, because we actually just today finished a lesson on privacy and AI, which, whew, mind-blowing. And reading those terms of use for our AI platforms is going to be so important. So we're going to add this probably to this unit, because personal information is being collected so much by these AI platforms, and much more so even than social media, without really telling us why or what. So I think it's important for kids to be aware of that and to start thinking about that before they dive in and using all these new tools. All right, and then the final unit is copyright, public domain, and fair use. I always feel terrible doing this last, because we assess the kids every year after cyber civics to see what lessons they liked most. Copyright is always their favorite unit. It's crazy. They love it. It sounds so boring, but I think it's because there's a lot of creativity in these units. They get to make a dance because dance moves are protected by copyright. They study Fortnite, which has violated copyright. A lot of these new AI tools are violating, well, I don't know, there's questions about copyright in AI. So it's really relevant to their day-to-day lives. And a lot of kids imagine themselves creating things that they're going to put online. And so that idea of ownership and creativity is very central to who they are, especially in middle school. And that's where we end level 2. We have a really fun lesson on the future of creativity and art. This is so apropos for today. We talk about, how a lot of AI is trained on the work of artists. And so when you're creating art in AI, which a lot of us do, it's actually based on art that it's trained on, that's made by all these other people. So that's more or less what this lesson covers. And it has a really great ethical choice. We kind of go through all the ethical considerations when you use AI, and really have the kids discuss and think about them. And then we give them kind of an ethical conundrum regarding Rembrandt as their final activity. So that's a really fun lesson to end level 2 on. Do either of you have any comments about teaching level 2?
Well, I think that all the levels taught together really make a complete picture, but this is one of those levels that teachers might need to like pull things out depending on what you've got going on in your curriculum. And there's a great opportunity to, if you're writing a big paper, to go through some of those plagiarism or to take a good look at Wikipedia. So it's super relevant to what you're doing at the time.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to jump to level 3 now. This is our level on media literacy and positive participation. I will say, for me personally, this is my favorite level to teach. And I think it's largely because if you have prepared your students with level 1 and 2, they have so much foundational knowledge that by the time you get to media literacy, which is using your critical thinking skills to analyze media messages, they have all the tools to really go deep on these lessons. And you can do that, which is really important. Media literacy is really having a moment right now because there is so much misinformation online, and it comes in all different places now in all of our social media and wherever it is we get our news, and now AI tools. So I think this is a really relevant level to teach. This is generally taught in 8th grade, but we actually have a lot of high schools that use this level. Is that correct, Peter? Do you see a lot of high schools using this now?
Yeah, there'll be a couple lessons that I wouldn't say age appropriate for high school, but again, the teacher will know what's best for their class. But definitely a big chunk, dozens of high schools do use level 3 for sure.
Yeah.
Especially specific units and lessons that we would help recommend as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, if you guys don't have time to teach every single lesson in cyber civics, we recommend our essential lessons. So always reach out to us if you have questions about that. All right, like the other levels, we start with a really quick getting started guide that just walks you through what you'll find in this level, followed by the teaching at home guide if you're a homeschooler or teaching a small group at home, the explainer, which is our send home parent letter, a syllabus for this level, and just some background information on media literacy. Like the previous levels, there's student pre and post assessment in here. And then our first unit is about being a participant in our participatory culture. And what those big words mean is that what's so cool about technology is that we can make anything. All of us can make and share with so many people, but that also requires a lot of responsibility. So we have a lesson here about that, about multitasking, how your brain can't handle a lot of things at once. It's just not scientifically possible. And then your brain on tech. I'm going to apologize to both Sony and Peter, because I know Sony's favorite lesson is multitasking and Peter's favorite lesson is your brain on tech. And I don't have time to go deep into either of those today. So if any of you watching want a one-to-one consultation on those two lessons, Peter and Cindy would be happy to give them to you because they both love those lessons. But I will say your brain on tech is a really important one because it talks about persuasive technologies. And these are the tactics that technology companies use to hold on to our attention today. And showing this to 8th graders who are already kind of critical of anything adults make is so powerful because they're like, I don't like that. Oh my gosh, I had no idea that was doing this to my brain and it's not fair. So it's a very powerful lesson to share with students, especially students that you may think are spending too much time online. But I am going to jump into Unit 2 because it's kind of the crux of this whole level, calling on critical thinking. Again, what you see here is the teacher guide that just introduces you to the lessons in the unit. That again is followed by the send home parent letter, which has activities that parent and child can do together along with videos they can watch. When you do the download, this is fill-inable, is that a word? You can fill in the date that you teach that lesson in the classroom and give that to parents so that aligns with your specific curricular year. All right, so I'm going to open up a lesson to show you an example. Just like the previous levels, this is what the teacher sees, a little summary, the Google Slides for the lesson. If there's videos, you have the links right there. You can download the lesson plan, which you see in front of you. You can download the student packet either in a fillable way or a printable way. Fillable just means that you can distribute it on whatever online platform your school seems to be using, or you can print it out for the students to do the work in the classroom. And again, the Google Slides just make this lesson so darn easy to teach. This is a really important one because we go back to the things taught in this lesson again and again in level 3. Basically, you don't want kids to get duped. It's easy for just about anyone to post anything online. Therefore, you must think like a detective. We go back to that word we introduced in level 1. And we talk about lateral reading, which we'll see in a minute in the video. And this lesson is really based on important research that was done by the Stanford History Group. They came up with 3 essential questions that students can use to analyze online information. And the first question is, who is behind the information? So for each question, we've made a little video. I'll just play a moment here.
With the internet literally at our fingertips, it's easy for anyone to post anything, anywhere, online, at any time. It's much, much more difficult to tell what's true, what's sort of true, and what is completely, well, bonkers. That's why it's up to us to think like detectives, so that we don't get duped or completely misled online. Fortunately, researchers at the Stanford History Education Group have been doing a lot of work in this area. In fact, they discovered that professional fact-checkers for some of the leading news organizations take certain steps when they evaluate information online. First, they leave the article or content in question and open a second tab on their browser in order to conduct their investigation. Then, they ask themselves the first of 3 essential questions. Who is behind this information?
So each video introduces the question. It gives you a list of points that you can go through with your students. Then it goes to the next question, and there's a video for each one. So the next one is, what is the evidence for their claims? And then what do other sources say about the author or organization? So those 3 essential questions we come back to again and again throughout level 3. I love the activity in this one because it pulls a real article that appears online today that has over 3.4 million people reading it. and it gives them a way to analyze that article to determine if it's something that you would use or believe or not. So very applicable to the everyday lives. We expanded this unit this year and we added a new lesson. We still have the analyzing websites lesson because websites today can also be full of misinformation or even not true. But we added a really important lesson on analyzing AI generated information because that's a lot of the information that students are getting now online. So we talk about, do you ever use it to generate information for a report or schoolwork? So we talk about using the 3 essential questions to apply them to AI generated information, which I think for kids these days, I don't know that they're getting this really in a lot of places, but we give them examples of like, here is an AI generated snippet that really comes from AI. And then we help them analyze who's behind the information and how they would ask the same questions with AI generated content. So super, super long, important lesson, but the activity I really love because again, it's the 3 essential questions. As a class, prompt a shared AI tool approved by your school, of course, with the question, analyze the response using the 3 essential questions. So we want them to be able to take those skills and apply them to anywhere that they happen to go online. All right, so going back to level 3. I see your notes to me in here, Sony. It's just so funny.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too on the AI one. Some schools, if kids don't have computers in the classes, or you don't want them on ChatGPT, or you've got some kind of rule in the classroom too. Sometimes I've just done it myself for them on the screen, which is another great way that we can kind of have a discussion in real time while we do it. So there's so many ways to adapt these lessons to make sense for what your school is asking of you.
Absolutely. So the next unit's misinformation. We talk about what news used to be, what it is today, clickbait, AI, and deepfakes. This one has also been updated this year because, as we know, AI is really making it easy to create fake images and fake photos and fake news articles. So that's basically what this lesson takes them through. There's some couple of videos in here, but I was going to go directly to the activity. For the activity in here, we actually made 2 different articles. One is a real article by a real journalist, and the other one is completely AI generated. And we give them a checklist so they can try to tell which is which. And I would challenge you as adults to see if you could figure it out, because it's really hard to tell which is the AI generated article and which is the human generated one. So we give kids some tools to make it easier for them to figure that out. All right, continuing with the level 3, we do have a unit on stereotypes and media representation. We all know that we're targeted all the time when we go online, and oftentimes we're targeted based on our age or gender or where we live. So we talk about what that means and how they can maybe use their tools better so that doesn't happen to them if they don't like it. We have an entire unit on visual literacy. This is really important too, because today our kids are getting most of their information from visual images. So learning how to read visual images is its own type of literacy. So we have a bunch of lessons on that. And the one thing I haven't mentioned that I really love about cyber civics is almost every unit, we start with kind of a look back, because, it's always tempting for us to think that today it's the first time we've ever been here. But actually, like even things like doctoring photos or fake photos, I mean, this has happened since there was photography. And so this lesson looks back in time at some of the famous doctored images and perhaps the stories they told that were different from reality. So I think it's important to kind of ground cyber civics sometimes in history to make kids understand that we've been here before. We can always learn how to master our tools because we have in the past. So there's also a lesson on don't let that photo fool you, when filters go too far. And then I'm really excited, and I hate that I saved this for last because it's something that I'm really pumped about this year. We added a whole new unit. Some of the lessons here you might recognize from last year, but the unit itself is new, called Digital Health and Wellbeing. And we did this because, as you all know, there's been so much in the news about the well-being of teens really being under assault right now with all the things they're dealing with. So we wanted to directly address this with these lessons about the biggest threats that they're up against and tell them what to do if it happens to them. So our very first lesson is about healthy relationships. I love this lesson so much. But it basically tells them what kind of relationship do you want to have in your online life and offline life? And how do you set boundaries? And how do you tell people this is the kind of safe relationship or healthy relationship I want to have? So this lesson sets them up for it. It's got some really fun scenarios that they can talk to each other about in the classroom. And then we move on to our lesson on sexting, which you might recognize from last year. We did update it a bit. We added a lesson on, private means private, which is revenge porn. And then we added this lesson on digital blackmail. I'm actually going to show you this one because it's something that's very important. Okay, so between 21 and 23, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security received over 13,000 reports of financial sextortion targeting minors. It involved 12,600 victims, mostly boys, and resulted in at least 14 suicides. So this is really, really serious. It's called sextortion. And the FBI has issued a warning on it, but a warning is only as good as the people who know about it, right? So the teens that are getting impacted by this, we need to prepare them to protect themselves. So that's what this lesson does. I'm going to just play you a moment here of the slides because I love the video in this one. I think it will really resonate with teens. Whoops.
With smartphones and computers, we can send and share anything online.
Sorry, what's the thing here? Google Slides is what I wanted. There we go. All right, so I'm going to play the slideshow for you. So spotting and stopping digital blackmail. And this reviews the previous lesson in which we asked them to review a platform to see what their rules are about posting inappropriate images and photos. And then we go into this lesson.
A stranger just slid into Leo's DMs. This seems like a pretty normal exchange. After all, the internet is all about connecting people. And though she's a stranger, Tina seems pretty cool. Maybe Leo will message her back. She could be a new friend. Plus her profile pic is pretty cute. Leo really likes Tina. Turns out she's super nice. She says she lives in another state, but she likes a lot of the same shows and video games he does. They've been messaging every night. And things have gotten a little flirty. Hold up. Does this seem like a normal exchange? From Leo's point of view, a cute girl around his age wants to start a romantic relationship. But Leo may be unaware of a phenomenon called sextortion. Online.
So it explains what sextortion is, which again, I think it's important that we equip kids with the skills of understanding it. But more important, this talks about what to do if it happens to you. Don't be embarrassed, even if adults fall for these schemes. Surveys show that many young people have been the target of sextortion. Be vigilant. What to do if you're the target. More what to do with your target. But I really like the activity for this one because in the video you just watched, there were a lot of red flags alerting Leo to the fact that he could be part of a sextortion scheme. And so that's what the activity is. We give the kids this red flag, and in pairs, we want them to write down all of the red flags they saw in the video, and then even other red flags that students should look out for should something like this potentially happen to them. So again, being super proactive, giving kids tips and tools so that they can recognize this stuff in the real world. And then this unit finishes up with another really important lesson on something called AI manipulated images. What that means is there's these tools now that create deep nudes, which means kids can take a picture of another kid and make it completely nude by using a free app online. So that's really rocked some school campuses. And then finally, it's so funny. I think this is probably our most topical lesson right now, Sony.
Hey, Diana, can I add something about sextortion?
Yeah.
We got a question in the chat real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the questions is asking about what grade would you talk about sextortion. So this lesson is in our 8th grade or 3rd level, but as all of our cyber civics levels, some schools choose to go earlier. If you feel like it's something happening in your school, you can certainly bring this up in 7th grade. You could pull that whole unit out. It's also applicable for high school, highly recommended for sex education classes and or anybody teaching any kind of wellness or online safety classes in high school. And so it's kind of up to you, but it does fit in nicely in the 3rd level of cyber civics. So it's great segue because there are other lessons that associate with that same topic.
And
Anybody else have anything to add on?
you queued me up perfectly for that, because we're going to announce this on Monday. We haven't launched it yet, but on Monday we're announcing the digital health and wellness series of lessons that's taught as its own little package for schools that just want to teach that. And it's appropriate, as Sony said, for middle school and also high school. So if you know a school, or if your school only wants to teach this series of lessons, let us know. You'll be hearing more about this next week. So we're really excited about it. I was going to say, Sony, this chatbot one is so appropriate right now, because there's been all this research about how many kids out there have relationships with chatbots. It's crazy. And then I don't know if you guys follow like the whole ChatGPT thing that came out. Everyone's freaking out about the new ChatGPT because they have such strong relationships with their chatbots from the previous ChatGPT or whatever it is. So this whole thing about real people and chatbots is like, we got to address it with our kids. So that's what this lesson does. And then finally, we end level 3 with the power in your hands. And it's basically a bunch of lessons about, wow, you have this great tool where you can do these incredible things. How will you use that power, and how have other people used it in the past? So that's where we end cyber civics. And we did it. I think we just about made an hour. So that was the goal today. We wanted to have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. I do want to say one thing. I went through that really fast because I wanted to give you a sense of at least 2 lessons from every level. And I know I have done so many workshops with teachers, and it's been like a whole day thing. But I always do this at the end of the day, and I'm like, okay, what lesson would you take out? And teachers are always saying to me, they're all important. There is not a lesson in here that kids don't need. So I'm saying that to you today because so many schools will address digital literacy by like, a speaker will come and talk to the kids, or, they'll do a lesson here or there. I'm sorry. This stuff, it just demands more attention than that. It's very complex. It's very deep. There's a lot of moving parts. So thank you for those of you that are already teaching cyber civics, because I think you're hopefully seeing the results on your own campus. And for those of you who are not yet, I hope that you will see the value of really doing these lessons that build skill upon skill. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to open it up now for questions. I know Peter and Sony, I see you typing there, so I think we've probably had a lot of questions already. Sony, do you want to take it from here? Is there anything we haven't answered?
Well, one thing we didn't really talk about was the 4th and 5th grade level is a full level. That's the on-ramps. And one strategy some schools are using is to kind of double that out into 2 years. So because a lot of the lessons have a online component and a real world component with the values lessons, some schools are teaching the in-person lessons first as kind of SEL lessons in 4th grade, and then building on that with the online components in 5th grade. And so it just gives you a little bit more time to explore some of those concepts. And as I mentioned before, everything in all of our levels kind of goes a little deeper, a little bigger, a little more, definitely more age appropriate in every single year. So those concepts keeps coming back around. And it's really perfect to think about different ways that you can stagger it based on what your students need, especially if you're running out of space. For those of us that are committed to the once a week teaching, it is tricky. We know like all of a sudden Friday is a snow day, and well, maybe for me in Minnesota, but I don't know what the rest of you. But all of a sudden Monday's a field trip and nobody's there, and you had a lesson plan. So it can get really like lost in the schedule if you were. So if you need to spread it out a little bit more, that's okay too. And then the other thing I'll mention is I think cyber civics is, because of the turnkey nature of it and the way the lessons are so easy to deliver, use them for substitutes if you need them. There are so many of those lessons that work so well for anybody to deliver to kids and can easily have great discussions and have it all sort of laid out and give you, the teacher, a little bit of a peace of mind knowing that the curriculum is still being carried out where you're not able to be there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. For your substitute teachers, this is so turnkey and easy to teach. And I think Peter can probably speak to this better than I can, but so many of our schools use this in really weird ways. Like it'll be a social studies class, an ELA class, a history class, an advisory period class. So even there's like math skills in some of these. So their schools are very strategic in where they put cyber civics, but it really fits in a lot of different places. And as you probably saw in the lesson plans, we ally them with the major standards so that you can see, you know, if there's certain things you need to hit, there and the educational standards.
Yeah, and that's just what I was going to say is it's very flexible to fit in any kind of setting. If you can supplement what you already have, or it's a standalone curriculum, really just depending on what your school needs. And we are here to help you with implementing it, however is best for your school. We're here to make recommendations and work with you around any of your, I don't want to say difficulties, but time restraints or anything else that they may be. So not only is it flexible enough, but we're also here to support you in every facet of your implementation.
And I see a question here. Did we answer the one about what grade would you talk about sextortion?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, again, that really depends on your community, but I will know that the statistics that are coming out of the FBI, it's 12 to 17. So, I mean, it's really disturbing that these teen boys are being targeted this. And you probably have seen the same stories we have in the news, but, you know, really great kids that just were so embarrassed because no one had ever talked to them about this and they didn't have anyone they felt they could turn to, that turned to suicide instead of, you know, turning to an adult. And we just find that so heartbreaking. So for sure, teenage boys, this is such an important thing to get to them even before they're teenagers so they understand that these things are happening. Any other questions that we didn't get to, you guys?
No, we hit all the questions in the chat. So just waiting to see if anybody else wants to add anything further. I think one other underrated thing about cyber civics that's really important for us to realize is that with a lot of things like these heavy topics, we're talking about sextortion, we're talking about revenge porn, like really big things. You know, not only is it tough for parents to kind of even grapple with the sheer volume of topics that they would need to cover at home, the research is really strong that simply having those conversations with kids ahead of time can make a huge difference in them making the right decisions when the situation is in front of them. So it is super important to prioritize a way to be able to bring this up to kids. All right, another one, just asking about arriving late in a video recording. Diana, where can they find that
Yeah,
out?
so I'm gonna, when we're done, I'm gonna post this to the website. And if you have signed up, you'll get the link tomorrow. In addition to that, you'll get a link to, we're gonna give away 4 of the lessons that we previewed today. So you can actually take a little bit of time and look at the slides, the lesson plan, and the student work. And you'll also get your certificate of participation. So all of that will be in the link you get tomorrow. And if you know any schools that didn't sign up and would like to see it, I'm going to eventually put the whole recording somewhere on the website. So we'll let schools know about that.
Great, thank you. So we got another question about homeschooling for different ages. I'm happy to help with this. I've worked with a few homeschool co-ops and some groups of folks trying to homeschool with a wide range of ages. And just like mixed age classrooms, if you are talking about your own kids or you're in a small group, you can kind of gauge like what's needed in terms of that particular group. But really many of these lessons are adaptable. I would say when you get into some of those sensitive lessons, really thinking about relationships and talking about some of the more challenging topics like sextortion and sexting and things like that, knowing your kids really well is going to be super helpful in this respect because you can bring that up at an appropriate level. And if you haven't done it by 8th grade, strongly encourage you to do that. But if you need it before, and you know you need it before because something's come up or there's questions, you always have the flexibility to bring that to your students in the way that makes sense. There is a lot of value in having discussions around these lessons. And like I said, that sharing and that back and forth are really important. So if you're in a homeschool environment and you don't have a bunch of other kids, or even if you just got a couple, see if there's some ways where you can have some of those discussions when it's really relevant around other young people, or even like I do at my dinner table with my own children. I have 4 kids. Just to kind of get some information about what people are thinking about that, and or what your kids are thinking, and let the other kids kind of chime in. Any way you can facilitate that discussion and have it be a back and forth rather than a lecture is going to bear a lot of fruit when it comes to these topics. So the homeschooling aspect just really is going to rely on you getting creative with a way to have some of those discussions and ways in which you can engage kids that doesn't feel like it's just information coming from you, but them also sharing how that applies to their lives.
And you will learn as much as your child, I guarantee, if not more.
Sure will.
Any other questions before we call it quits here?
Last chance for any other burning questions. You've got Diana Graver here to give you the answers. All right, as a parent, how do you find out what a school is doing with digital citizenship? This is an awesome question. I can take this one if you want me to, Diana.
No, this is good.
Yeah, so as parents, we should be asking our school how they're doing it. Many states do have standards that require that media literacy is being taught, but a lot of times it's mixed into the ELA standards. A few states have standalones. But it is such a critical thing to know if your school is presenting these lessons. And if they aren't, please have them reach out to us. We're more than happy to share what we know about our curriculum. There are other curriculums out there too. And honestly, there's no excuse. It's such a huge topic right now happening. And the way I describe it, if you are a parent and you're passionate about your child having media literacy in your classroom, remind the people that make those decisions that, there was a time when sex education wasn't welcome in schools, or when we didn't give driver's education to students, or if you grew up in North Dakota like me, hunters safety, things like that. Those are critical things that we know that we need for our kids if they're going to be online or doing these things that I'm talking about, driving a car, all of those things. And digital literacy, media literacy is absolutely essential because we know that they're going to be online. And so either they're discussing it on their own and making up their own rules and making some guesses, or they're getting some guidance and some assistance in thinking and pre-digesting these questions, because once the absolute sheer volume of choices and options come their way, we want them to be able to say, oh yeah, I've already been through, I know the answer to this one, or this is familiar to me. So just strongly encourage you to encourage your school to make sure that digital literacy is a priority. And for the schools that are, well done, so proud of you. And also you should be screaming that from the rooftops, because it really is something parents need to know. You teachers, if you're doing media literacy in your classroom, share it with your parents. Make sure that they understand that this is what's happening. And that's why those parent resources are in all of our levels, because we want you to push that out and let parents also be supporting the things that you're trying to do in class at home. And also it helps you to get educated right alongside your students.
Yeah, and I will say, if you go on our website, one of my favorite testimonials is actually from the principal at our initial school, who found that once he started teaching cyber civics, it saved him so much time, because all the problems that were coming to his office previously on cyberbullying and digital drama and plagiarism and all that stuff stopped, because we were preempting problems. And so he figured he got back hours of his life back in the administrative office because he didn't have to deal with student issues anymore. So I think right there, if nothing else, that's a huge selling point for schools, especially administration, to save that time. Peter, you know that because your wife's an administrator at a school that has cyber civics. And I know she deals with a lot of problems, but they're probably not digital ones, right?
Not as many by a long shot. Like you said, preemptive is a very good word that we can use. And it builds a culture too. Class culture, school culture. Yeah. And Sony is an enrollment person at her school, and so her saying that it helps with parent, enrollment and school credibility and anything to enhance the school. Yeah, you should be shouting it from the rooftops for sure.
Okay, Diana, I've got another question. Someone's asking, are there any units addressing YouTube specifically, watching, posting, etc.?
Well, probably the one most applicable to that is, well, there's a couple. The time unit, the time lessons in 7th grade. I really like those lessons a lot, and I wish I had time to show them to you. But they basically have kids assess how they spend their time. They do a daily tracker over a weekend from the time they wake up and the time they go to sleep. And then they do a chart graphing how much time. And I'll tell you, YouTube is always the biggest bar chart. Like that's where kids are spending so much of their time right now. So it gives us a window to talk about what they're doing on YouTube. Just a word about that, like what I discovered teaching that unit, and I'll tell you a story because we have a few minutes here. I had a kid that watched, he did his chart and it was like he'd spent 24 hours on YouTube in 24 hours. I'm like, oh my, I wanted to call his mom and say, what are you thinking? This kid was on YouTube. And I made this judgment about the kid, and then later discovered the reason he spent so much time on YouTube is he's watching educational videos on how to make a computer, which he then did. He made a computer based on videos he watched on YouTube. So I thought for me, that was such a aha moment, because I was going to prejudge this kid based on time, and you can't do that. You have to ask, what are you doing online? And you may find that the time kids are spending online is really productive. So that's how we discussed YouTube. It comes up again in the visual literacy, because videos right now, so many of them are generated by AI. So we talk about that in 8th grade again in that level on visual literacy. So,
and I would say also in a level on filter bubbles, we do get into that the auto next play and all of that, and what happens when an algorithm starts feeding you a lot of information. So there's definitely some challenges for them to evaluate what's coming their way and the autoplay and all of that.
Yeah,
and we get again the other lesson that Peter loves, the one on Your Brain on Tech, also talks about YouTube.
And brain on tech. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Peter.
Personal information too, because what you're giving up is what you're getting back. If you're okay with the algorithms, you're giving up your personal information to do so. So it's interwoven throughout quite a bit.
Yeah. And that's what I love about cyber civics, is that everything's interwoven. Like we address things from all different angles. So you'll see a topic talked about in a very simple way in 4th grade and talked about again in 6th grade, and then more complex in 8th grade.
Another question, would you address predators in 8th grade?
Well, we actually do that in a bunch of different ways again.
Yeah.
So we talk in digital on-ramps, there's a lesson about keeping safe from strangers. So we don't use the word predator, but you tell kids how to keep safe from strangers. And then we do it again in 6th and 7th grade. We talk about phishing attempts, which is basically strangers catfishing, a stranger trying to reach you. That's under the online threats that I talked about really shortly there. And then we get very deep about it in 8th grade in those lessons I showed you on digital health and well-being, where we talked about strangers that try to blackmail you, digital blackmail and all that. So
and in privacy in level 2, we also talk about sharing personal information, keeping your information private, which sort of platforms would you put and what information would you put to.
So it's again addressed throughout the curriculum.
And I think one of the things that we do really well in cyber civics is we talked about this a little bit with digital drama and cyberbullying, but there's a lot of power in defining terms and repeatedly using those same terms so everybody's using the same language. So in the term of strangers, we are teaching kids from a very young age that a stranger is somebody you haven't met in person. So this language is sort of research-based language and language that government entities and pediatric organizations are telling people to use, because even as kids may have opportunities to meet someone online and get comfortable with that person online, we still want them to use the term stranger in defining somebody that their family or they themselves haven't met in person. And so making sure that those lines are really clear. That also can apply to chatbots and a bunch of other ways in order to explaining to kids what actually, it means to know somebody. All right, I don't see any other questions unless anybody else has any.
All right. Well, if you're a Waldorf school or you know a Waldorf school, we're doing this again on Thursday, same time, same place. Well, different place, but same time. Specifically for Waldorf schools that Sony will lead, since she has taught in a lot of those schools. And then if you have any questions that we didn't address today, we are so easy to reach. You have our phone number, 949-481-4319. You have our support email address, support@cybercivics.com. Peter gave you his email address. Sony is Sony@cybercivics.com. I'm dgraber@cybercivics.com. We are here all the time to answer your questions. As you can tell, all three of us are passionate about this curriculum. We've taught it, we love it. So there's probably not a question we can't address, or at least try to address. So feel free to reach out anytime. Any last words, guys?
No, just thank you, Diana.
Thanks so much for
Tony.
coming.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, guys. All right. And thank you for spending your time with us. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye.